Welcome back to my Pile of Shame Diaries, the series where I not only document how I put an end to my pile of shame, but also share how I tackle each challenge, whether it is volume, quantity, or complexity. For today's episode, I have something you will not want to miss. I'll be facing a challenge we can all relate to: army painting. But not just any type of army painting, the boring and repetitive rank and file. Not only will I show you the recipe I used to paint all 40 of my clan rats in a single day, but also share tips and tricks you can apply to your future armies, or the ones already collecting dust in your closet. And afterwards, we'll take a look at everything else I have painted since the last episode. There is a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's get to it. As you can see, I had already built up half of the clan rats from the scavenge type box in the past, in an effort to segment the work and make it feel less overwhelming. We can see how that went. I had also picked out a couple of base coats here and there every time I had leftover paint on my palette, but in the end this approach was going nowhere. However, this time I had a plan, or more precisely, I was motivated by a plan. In the first episode of the Pile of Shame Diaries, I talked about motivation and how to create momentum through trying out new techniques. Well, I haven't been idle since then. I became enamored with gimmicky paint schemes, and I knew one of them would be the key to tackling this challenge. When it came to finding inspiration, the official art for Scavengtide was all I needed. That glowing green light from below practically cut my painting work in half, while making sure the scheme would be eye-catching. But I still had to develop the scheme itself. And for that, a test model, or in this case 8, is a must, unless you're following someone else's recipe. Trust me, once you begin batch painting, you won't see where the project is going until right before it's done. And there is no worse hobby feeling than working hard on an army and realizing you don't like the result at the very end. Which brings us to the topic of batch painting. For those unfamiliar, imagine a paint scheme that has 4 steps. Batch painting means you do step 1 on all models, then step 2 on all models, and so on, rather than painting each model from start to finish individually. This is a double-edged sword. On one hand, batch painting is very time efficient, since you don't have to color swap constantly and you only focus on one task at a time, freeing your mind for other things. On the other hand, you don't get a clear sense of the final result until the end, and you don't get the satisfaction of finishing a single model along the way. This can make the process feel boring or even soul-crushing. However, since you don't have to think about what comes next, you can focus on other things. Music, podcast, or an audiobook can make the process more bearable or even enjoyable. But for this to work in your favor and not as a distraction, it is crucial that your painting steps are pre-established. So again, do a test model and if possible, write down the steps. However, batch painting 40 models in a day works for me because I'm currently riding a wave of inspiration. More likely than not, if I don't finish all the models together, I won't go back to them as I'll get dragged down into other projects. But that doesn't have to be your workflow. Whether it is painting 1 or 2 models a day, or batch painting 10, 20 or 40 miniatures over a weekend, find the pace that fits your style and schedule. Whenever you see videos titled Painting Armies in 24 hours, take them with a grain of salt. As I said in the first episode, this is a hobby meant to be enjoyed, not a chore. For my own enjoyment, I combined 2 techniques I've been practicing recently: a colored underpainting approach and a directional light effect. But no matter your approach, there are 2 things you must do when army painting. Keep the palette simple and focus on what truly matters. Keeping the palette simple is a no-brainer. The fewer colors you have to manage, the better. But that doesn't mean limiting your choices, just being smart about where you can reuse them. For example, using the same highlight color across elements not only saves time, but also adds harmony to the scheme. When it comes to focusing on what matters, I'm talking about skipping small details. For my clan rats, I didn't paint a single belt, pouch, eye or tooth. These models are meant to be seen from arm's length on the tabletop, so I put all my attention in the overall look. With that in mind, here are the steps I followed. First, a reddish-brown zenithal undercoat, which will create contrast against the green glow from below while also doubling as the cloth color. Second, base coating the tails, a signature element of the rats, the wood of the shields, and the fur and skin, both with the same color to simplify things. For the metallics, I applied a light red brush, creating scratches while letting the underpainting show through on some places. Third was a unifying dark brown wash made of 3 parts wash, 3 parts medium, 1 part black ink and 2 parts water. I would have swapped the water for medium for some smoother results, but I wasn't sure that I would have enough for all the models. Once dry, I did a quick dry brush from below with white. This way, when I sprayed transparent green from underneath, the white underpainting would glow brighter, while the rest of the model would catch a subtle tint. Had I not stuck the models to the bases, I could have gotten a quicker and more dramatic light, but I hadn't planned for this before I started building. Finally, for the base, I first laid down a very dilute mix of black and dark green, and immediately swapped brushes and let some diluted white I had already prepared mix wet on wet. Once that was dry, I glazed over a mix of light green and fluorescent green, creating a glowing warpstone effect. Again, were the models not stuck to the bases, this would have been much faster. With a clean black base trim, that's how I got all 40 clan rats painted in a single day, while keeping the process fun, fast and stress-free. But that wasn't everything I've been working on. Apart from the model from the oil paint tutorial, which had a companion, and the Trench Crusade Hell Knight from last week's tutorial, I also finished a group of bandits using a moonlight scheme. On top of that, I prepared several random models to keep practicing the colored underpainting style. So far, I fully painted 5 of them, but I have the rest ready to work on bit by bit. But now it's your turn. I want to make the Pile of Shame Diaries a community project, so if you haven't already, share what you've been painting in the comments or what projects you've finished over the past few weeks. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the tips in it helpful. If so, join me next time for a new challenge in my Pile of Shame Diaries.